we don't realize that we're truly in partnership with our partner's nervous system.
Co-regulation. Right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And we think that, oh, I like them because I like their personality, or their sign is compatible with mine, or, I'm a leg man, like whatever that is. And we think that that's what we're getting into, but we don't realize that we're really engaging with that. We're in relationship with that person's nervous system. And whenever we keep triggering or dysregulating that person's nervous system because we don't know how to regulate our own, so we're not able to co-regulate, there's going to be a lot more conflict and trauma and challenges and trauma because of this. And we're so unaware of that. And we're not given these skills.
Welcome to Rebuilding the Village, a podcast that seeks to explore the causes of modern problems by examining the roots of our metaphorical village through the systems and structures in society that may have been disrupted in the technological and industrial era that we inhabit. Thank you for joining me today. Dominique, how are you doing today? Let's start off. What is your background?
Oh, goodness. I've been a nurse for over 30 years. I began my nursing career at the age of 19. And then during my career, I went on a path of discovering Tantra, which at the time as a nurse, I was also helping with opening hearts through, open heart surgeries. And I discovered that Tantra was the tools that really opened people's heart. I had such profound healing with that. And so I just became passionate about helping others to open their hearts and open up their whole worlds and improve their relationships and lives through Tantra. So I started doing coaching and then left my nursing career about 9 months into working front lines of the pandemic.
Wow.
So all in with my coaching. Yes.
Yeah, that must have been rough with the pandemic. So I think a lot of people I've heard of Tantra, but I think in my category, most people think of Tantra, they think of like tantric sex. Exactly. And I'm sure it's way more than that, but I wouldn't even know where to begin. So start off with what is Tantra?
Yeah, initially those were my thoughts too. I think hearing about it from Sting and things like that back in the day, that was my initial thoughts as well. But it's so much more than that. The tantric practices originate mostly from India, from over 5,000 years ago. And these techniques that are used, these tools that are used, are really to expand people's consciousness and help to work on their chakras and their energy centers and keep their energy open and flowing, and to be able to stay in more meditative states to, reach enlightenment. And so what happens, the byproduct of that is when you really know how to master your own energy within your chakras, when you know how to have a deep connection and presence, and with opening the heart chakra, you love yourself very deeply, you approach relationships from a much different energy. And even the way you make love is much different because you know how to fully be present and dropped in and connect because you've made that first deep connection within yourself. So the byproduct of that is that, the lovemaking is better, but that's not what the goal is.
I'm sure most people would sign up specifically for that intention. Just like, I heard you help me have better sex. Like, yeah, that and other things too.
Yeah, and it is a lot. That was initially my interest as well. So I get that, but then there was so much more to it. I just kind of went down a rabbit hole. There's so much more. It's much more than it meets the eye.
What I recall about things like Tantra is that it's beneficial in helping to like almost disable your ego. And I'm a bit more, we'll say, scientific, and I've learned about a lot of the connections between the two, that essentially you're trying to learn how to get perspective on yourself and get clarity on yourself and also connecting with people by getting out of your own way. Yes. In a way. So things like Tantra, so in your case, what do you think of as like when it comes to Tantra and practicing it? Like what's a beginner thing that people would start with? Like where do you even begin with like stepping into that mode of doing things and how it can impact your life?
Yeah, the initial way to really start it, a lot of people don't think it's very sexy, but is just, again, working on that relationship you have with yourself through pink Tantra practices, focus on your heart chakra and self-love. And so, the more deeply we're able to love ourselves and accept ourselves as we are, then we're able to love other people more deeply and not have as much judgment. But sometimes when I'll share with people like, oh, to have a healthy relationship, it first starts with the relationship you have with yourself. That's really not what people want to hear, because they don't want to, they want to get to the good, juicy stuff first. But when you start to love yourself in a really deep, profound way, and you embody that, then you start to attract other people too that have that, and you actually attract better lovers, because like attracts like. You're going to attract someone that's kind of at the same energy or vibration, and Tantra helps you actually raise your vibration on your emotional frequency scale, and your aura gets bigger. And so you can just be, attracting things to yourself and manifesting things in a really powerful way. So it all starts with self-love practices. And that's where I begin people with. And then also going through the chakras as well, going into the root chakra, because that has to do with our safety. Safety is so important and how we relate to others. And looking at, with the root, any mother or father wounds, because those mother or father wounds, even if we're not consciously aware, that could be subconsciously aware, are tripping up how we relate to others. And then circling back to self-love, relationships, Michael, are just a mirror, and they're reflecting back to us the relationship we have within ourselves. So when we start to improve that relationship within ourselves, the relationships with others start to change too. So I have worked with people that their spouse didn't know they were working with me, and they were having some intimacy blocks and some other challenges, and their spouse started to engage with them in a different way when they started to have this different relationship with themselves, and they started showing up in the relationship in a different energy. It started making things shift.
Yeah. Big eye opener for me this past year was how profound relationships can be in becoming a mirror to yourself.
Yeah.
And I have definitely had a history that I've touched on here and there in this podcast about realizing that I've been like dating the same people over and over, and they've been falling apart. Relationships are falling apart for the same reasons over and over. There's a certain thing within the culture, and maybe it's a collective ego thing, that people will just say, like, if you're a heterosexual man, you're dating women, like, oh, women are all the same. Like, no. Every woman that you've met, because you keep finding the same woman over and over and over, are the same, or vice versa for girls to guys. Same. It's a lot of commonality in the issues, but you don't realize how you are attracting certain types of people, or your body is responding well to certain types of people because of certain behavior patterns that are coming out in terms of the person that you're with, that's reflecting something that you just haven't dealt with yet.
I love that you shared that. And again, that goes back again to the self-love piece, because all of the partners that we're dating, I had that pattern too. All of the partners that I would date were the same, but I was showing up in relationship the same.
Yep.
I was showing up in what I would tolerate, what my boundaries were, what my value was, how deeply did I love myself, how worthy did I feel of receiving love. The same. And then also playing out into those childhood wounds and relationship dynamics, we often look for a partner subconsciously that carries the same type of, wound that we may have with a parent, where we didn't feel like we got the right love or appreciation or acceptance. And we feel like we're going to heal that by having someone similar to them. Remember, familiar, the root word of familiar is family. Familiar to us, and we're like, oh, they feel like home, watch out. So what was your home life like? But then we're playing that out, because then we feel like, oh, then I can feel okay, and I can feel like I was worthy of love, even by that person that had that has the same patterns as my parent. That means that my parents should have loved me, that it wasn't me. And so we can be subconsciously looking for that and setting ourselves up for failure if we haven't done our work.
I think a lot of people, myself included, years ago, and to some degree, there is a Western misconception around Eastern medicine and philosophies, in that if we can't see it, therefore it must not be there. Right. And this is a good example. I do massage therapy, but the schooling I went through touches on a lot of Asian and Eastern perspectives on things. And they also taught acupuncture. And a lot of people have a perspective on acupuncture, which is that it's like they're just sticking random needles in random spots, and it's supposed to fix the problem. This isn't medicine. This isn't medication. This isn't this. And it's like, well, at the same time, they've been trial and erroring this for 3,000 plus years. Like, there is parts of acupuncture that are crap, and there are parts that are really, really good. Same thing with any kind of like relationship type stuff, where you have to ask the question, is like, is there something deeper here that maybe you can't see? And I know a lot of people. I've growing up, I definitely had that almost, there was almost a comedic sense around things like, oh, this is just daddy didn't love me enough. This is mommy didn't give me enough hugs. Really, just gotta just man up and just get there. And you don't realize, like, no, it's exactly what it is in some relation, in some way, and that nobody's ever going to get through childhood like unscarred, we'll say, but recognizing like what your personality is, what you specifically needed, and maybe there was a mismatch between your parents, and it's not their fault, it's not your fault, but it is your responsibility to identify it, try to make sure you don't carry it along, and show up presently in each relationship, knowing what you need and what you don't need, and setting appropriate boundaries for each person as they go along. Which is why it's so funny you mentioned like how relationships could be a mirror. That to me, it's almost analogous to saying like, every time I walk past this person, this wound on my chest opens up, but I don't understand why they're not fixing it for me.
Yeah, we
And it's
put
like, well,
that on
this
our
is your
partner a lot.
opportunity to fix it for yourself. This is why, like, being in these kind of relationships, for example, can be beneficial if you are basically walking and saying, whatever comes up, I'm going to deal with it. But I'm going to voluntarily walk into the relationship knowing that something is going to come up and it's my responsibility to fix it, not theirs.
Yeah. And if when we can get to a place, before Tantra, I would react a lot. Like I would be really quick to get angry or frustrated. And then I couldn't understand when people would tell me, oh, I used to have a really bad temper and I got over it. And I was like, how did you do that? Like that just seemed so wild to me. But that was the thing that it really chilled me out and got me more into a zen. But, it's so important. We're so empowered when we are able to respond to challenges instead of being reactive, when we know how to respond. And our ability to respond, again, to go back to what you were saying, is our responsibility. So the big thing that helped me initially on my healing journey with Tantra was realizing that people's behavior is a reflection on them. My response to their behavior is a reflection on me. I cannot control them. I can only control how now I can create a boundary and communicate with my partner and let them know there's certain things that may trigger something in me because I've had this childhood wound. And I just want you to be aware of it so you can understand. And then also know that I might need to take a pause and resource myself in those moments. And it's not personal to you, but I just need to pause for a moment, use some of my practices, take some deep breaths, go outside for a walk. It is really important, especially if your partner has an abandonment wound. If you decide to go outside for a moment and circle the block a few times and come back and speak, that you say, hey, I'm going to be back. I just need to take a moment, but I will come back in X amount of time and communicate that and be back so that they don't feel abandoned in that moment. So I want to hear what you say. I do care about you. It's important that I hear what you say. And right now I'm a little upset and I'm not going to be able to hear and be present and really understand where you're coming from. So just give me a moment, because when our nervous systems gets dysregulated, we are more reaction. We go into Frankenstein brain, danger, danger, instead of the Einstein brain of problem solving and finding a solution to.
Call it monkey brain.
Yeah.
But for anybody who's listening or watching who is understanding just like, what is that time needed to step away? In a nutshell, essentially what's happening is you mentioned nervous system dysregulation, which means your body's going to start flooding with stress hormones because it perceives a threat that's not actually there. You getting into an argument with your husband or your wife or your girlfriend, your boyfriend, whatever, is not much different than your brain saying, holy crap, a lion is coming, start running. And if you're not able to ground yourself in that moment of like, okay, how do I deal with this lion? How do I deal with this person? Your body's going to just go shut down or run away. And then in response, flooding a lot of hormones into your system, and your body needs time to metabolize those hormones. It's exactly
Yes.
like things like if you ever have like caffeine, you feel like just like a jolt of energy the whole day, then it kind of starts to wear off over time. It's like, yeah, your body's metabolizing the caffeine, so you start to feel it kind of come down. But the same thing is like, if you need to, this is a big thing I've been learning about and seeing is how like, and when it comes to relationships or marriages or anything like that, that you need to really sit down with your partner and say, what are the rules of conflict? What are the rules of engagement? Like, rules might be like no name calling, no bringing up the past, no absolutes. We're working together to solve a problem, not try to kill each other. Like, recognize where the root of it is so that when it does come along, you essentially say, it's like, in case of emergency, oh, I know it's switch to pull, not just going back to these default behaviors. I've had a lot of people, a lot of friends I've seen over the years where they'll snap they'll have an emotional moment, and afterwards they just walk away like, oh, well, I guess the relationship's not going to work out. It's like, well, did you fight healthily? Did you actually solve the problem, or are you just running away from it now? Because really what may have happened there is that you may have just involuntarily exposed a wound, but rather than try to fix it or address it, understand it, or create safety and boundaries around it to make sure it doesn't blow anything up, you're just walking away.
And then, the next person, and then picking the next person that's the same, that's going to bring up that same wound. And then every time it gets brought up, the running, because we don't want to be, it feels confrontational to face those parts of ourselves. And so then we continue, but as long as we continue to stay in that cycle, it's like the same type of people are going to be shown to us to show us where our wounds are and how we need to heal them.
Yeah. It takes a lot to do a number of things, but I think two things people misconstrue, I think, is that one, you can be a functional human being while still having like wounds you're carrying and working on. Thinking about like your wounds in your past and things like that. I've met a lot of people in my life that are like, oh, I could see like a parent wound, I could see a family, I could see something in there based on the way you just acted or said to that there's something in there that needs to like get aired out. Helping guys to try to get to that point too, from my own perspective.
It's beautiful you're doing that.
Thank you. And that a lot of people have this perception of absolutes in their thinking towards things. It's like, I could say I love my mother. I could also say there was a hell of a lot of chaos in the household. I could say I love my family, my mother, my father, my sister, my brothers, all those things like that. It's like they were amazing people and they had a lot of shit they brought to the table that caused me a lot of distress. Like those can both coexist. And a lot of people, I think, protect their own past and by extension their wounds by trying to pedestalize and glorify the past by protecting themselves from the reality of it. And I think maybe there's a lot of pushback from, I guess, people nowadays saying like, that was then, this is now. It's like, to your brain doesn't know the difference though. To your brain, every relationship is the same exact interaction you had with your parents growing up or with your sister. Or if you're getting intimate with somebody but you were sexually assaulted, to your brain, that's the same sexual assaulter coming back to you to attack you again. And identifying these patterns are not necessarily your fault, but it is your responsibility to make sure you have control of it or have some kind of structure around it to ensure it doesn't keep repeating.
Now, I want to add, I also work with men as well. I work with, men and women couples, but another thing, I'm also a trauma-informed master coach. And one thing we learned within that program that really caught my eye was like, wow, over 95% of adults received inadequate parenting. That's a high number. That's why we have such chaos in the world, because people aren't addressing these things. And it's generational trauma. Our parents had trauma, our grandparents had trauma, and they just kept passing that down. Yep. So, not to feel isolated in this if you've had that. Majority of people have. But another thing, when you talk about someone who's had an assault or something, it's not necessarily that that person is always going to think every person is that same experience. But it's really important for their nervous system to feel really safe and create safety with the level that they're going to be in, so their nervous system can relax, because there can be certain triggers or certain things there if they're not feeling safe. So it's really important for their nervous systems to be relaxed. And Tantra actually is one of the things that also helps to heal trauma. Over 5,000 years ago, the 3 tenets of Tantra are breath, sound, and movement. And when I became certified and I went through all the modules for trauma and learning that, the 3 things that support healing trauma are also breath, sound, and movement. So it's like, oh, no wonder I had healing, but I had healing on more of a pleasure path than a regular therapist path. But that was my journey.
Yeah, and the breath, sound, movement thing sounds very analogous to how you would interact with your nervous system.
It is.
That's a big one that people think. People think it's like, yeah, there is something around these types of healing work that it's just like, it sounds hokey pokey, sounds like voodoo and sorcery and magic. But when you connect it to like a Western perspective, to kind of say like breathing, for example, is a fantastic way of calming yourself down. Your breath is a good connection between you and your nervous system. It's one of the few connections you have that you can actually control yourself. Sound, vibration. Anybody's ever listened to music that they really enjoy and they get like goosebumps, or they're at a festival or a concert and they're just like in the moment in this whole thing, or the movement thing. Like, this is why exercise and things is so important, to kind of get that energy out, let it let it release and let your nervous system kind of be exposed to new stimuli to get it to realize we're not under attack anymore. This is not danger. It's okay. This is a perfect example. Like you see people in like high intensity training, like in the military or the police, how they have to go through these chaotic scenarios over and over, and like in simulation, over and over and over again, because the first few times you hear gunshots going off and explosions, you're just freaking out, oh my god. And then to go through 20, 30 times, like you're just calm as could be, even though chaos is happening because you've been there and you're basically showing your nervous system like it's okay, don't freak out, we're under control, we know what we're doing. And then you can control yourself in these situations in a proper manner. You mentioned before the intergenerational trauma thing, which has been interesting to learn about. How I think people nowadays, especially the old, when I say older generation, I mean like baby boomers, greatest generation, there is this perception of like kids nowadays, people nowadays are just freaking just wimps, they're sissies, they can't toughen up. Back in my day, and intergenerational trauma, yes, and people look back like one generation and say like, oh well, we were fine back then, I don't see what the problem is. But when you expand the time scale, and this is what I kind of get to a point in this podcast, is that one of the major turning points in human evolution and history was the Industrial Revolution, and how a lot of history, more or less, minus the traumatic parts, was a lot of human interaction from birth until adulthood was spent around your family and your friends and around people. Whatever the job, whatever the work was, we were all working together in the fields or on the farm or in the shop or in the community, in the village. And now when these factories and things came along, when modernization, globalization came along, now mom and dad are working an hour or two away from home, or like dad is in the city for an hour, like an hour or two commute, 8 hours a day. Mom is over there doing one thing, and a lot of people are now having to learn how to take care of themselves and parent themselves, and there's a lot of like abandonment and isolation in that, and adjusting to that. Our minds and our bodies are not really designed for the structure that society is going through today, and it's causing a lot of problems intergenerationally. And people will say like, well, the baby boomers, we were the tough generation. What's interesting about that, as I've heard, is that one of the largest growing percentage groups of people getting divorced nowadays is people between the ages of like 60 and 80. That a lot of them back then, they didn't have a healthy model of marriage and relationship and family. A lot of that was post World War II. And a lot of people just stayed together because the kids, or because divorce was so taboo, rather than say like, if our marriage is not working out, is it something from our past that's causing problems right now? It just became easier for people to say, I'm just moving on. I'm trying to move on, let go from it.
Yeah, exactly. Another thing I want to share about nervous system regulation is we don't realize that we're truly in partnership with our partner's nervous system.
Co-regulation. Right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And we think that, oh, I like them because I like their personality, or their sign is compatible with mine, or, I'm a leg man, like whatever that is. And we think that that's what we're getting into, but we don't realize that we're really engaging with that. We're in relationship with that person's nervous system. And whenever we keep triggering or dysregulating that person's nervous system because we don't know how to regulate our own, so we're not able to co-regulate, there's going to be a lot more conflict and trauma and challenges and trauma because of this. And we're so unaware of that. We're not given these skills. We just think love is about, hearts and romantic dinners. But even when I work with male clients, I had a client that had a health issue and he had atrial fibrillation. So he was looking to work with me more, not for the intimacy in the bedroom things, but for nervous system regulation. And I did help him with that. But then all of a sudden, his wife didn't know he was doing this work with me. And I coach my clients globally via Zoom. And all of a sudden, she started initiating lovemaking more often with him. And she became more interested. And I asked him, how long has it been since she's had this interest with you? And he says, it's been decades. And all of a sudden, their lovemaking started improving. Because subconsciously, especially for women, one of the things that we need to do to feel in the mood is feel safe.
Mm-hmm.
And if we can sense intuitively, and our nervous systems can sense if our partner is really stressed out and their nervous system is off, and we won't know why, and we'll be like, oh, and we won't be as interested, even though we may love them, because especially men in our society, they're so taught and programmed to be the protectors, the providers, the strong ones, not to share their emotions. But men are humans having a human experience. But unfortunately, for so long, it's been programmed and like, don't show any weakness, which is crazy, right? It's a lot of pressure on men. But with that, they can be holding back and trying to put a mask on and act like everything is okay. But underneath the surface, if they're really stressed out and the partner feels that, even though you may be doing and acting and saying the right things and feel like I'm doing all the things and I'm being a provider, if she senses that tension, it's not going to create safety for her, and she won't even know why she's not really having the desire.
Yeah. Again, winding back the clock again, that prior to the machismo age, or even in back in the day, the idea of like the warriors and the gladiators and whatnot, those men still had cohorts and groups of other men to help regulate their nervous systems. Like like the simplest example is like you go back to like hunter-gatherer days. More often than not, most of the men weren't going out hunting, but they were going, so that was like a men's group, which we have today. Like that was the original men's group, was like, we're going out with the boys. We're gonna go hunt down a bison. We're gonna bring it back, but along the way, we'll talk about our problems. We'll vent out some issues. We get stressed out from, oh my God, that thing almost killed me. I'm all shaken up, and the guys around like, it's okay, bro. We're here. Just take a deep breath, relax, and then they offloaded that tension and didn't bring it back home. Whereas now people, like a lot of guys will go to work and they're stressed out from their boss, they're stressed out from their job, the market's not doing that well. And then they say, well, I can't talk to anybody about this. I'm a man. I'm supposed to just shut up and bottle it up and keep it inside. My wife doesn't want to hear about this because it sounds like I'm complaining. Who do I go to? What do I do? Not realizing like you're going to bring it home whether you want to or not. It's going to be in the house whether you want to or not. And it's going to start to manifest and start to like, I refer to it as like generational echoes, or even like behavioral. Like it's going to pop up somewhere whether you want to or not. And then like you're better off voluntarily saying, I need to create a ritual. And it could be once a week bowling with the boys, or we're going to go to the bar on Fridays and watch the game every week, or we're going to go, like I know a guy, he's a very big high up like executive at Chase Bank, and like every 3 to 4 months he goes hunting with his buddies upstate, and it's like him and 4 of his military buddies. And this guy is like, he's got great money and he's executive. He's just like, I just like being out in nature with my friends that I've known for years, and we just sit there and we just stay quiet and we just like attune to nature, and we'll hunt a deer and we'll bring it back home. And that's like his male mental recovery time. And then his marriage and his family, everything's fantastic as a result. But like not having that space to feel comfortable to like let that kind of energy out and not carry it into your household and wondering where it's coming from.
Exactly. Plus, nature's so healing. Just us being in nature and grounding in nature is really good for our nervous system.
I think about this with like white noise. I used to, like when I was growing up, I would always need to have like the TV on because I couldn't stand dead silence. And at some point, it kind of dawned on me. I was walking outside on like a hike one day, and you just hear just the random noises, just like birds chirping and buzzing crickets and maybe some wind. And you think like we evolved with this sound in the background for millions of years. And then suddenly one day we all went inside these big things called houses and we turned the sound off, and we're wondering why we can't sleep. It's like we're so disconnected from nature.
Now, one of the things that I do is I have a Spotify playlist, and I'll play it through my home of sounds of nature with birds, because our ancestors, they would know that the environment was safe when the birds are singing, because when the birds stop singing, that alerts danger.
Immediately signals your nervous system something's off. Yeah.
So I just listen to that at a really low setting as a nice background noise. So then my subconscious is just cueing in safety to my nervous system.
So shifting the topic a little bit, what has been your experience with a trend in male mental health and how it ties into Tantra? And a couple different topics we could talk on this one, but we were talking about the crisis of men's mental health nowadays. And one of those topics being men don't want to open up. Men have this machismo ideology. They're supposed to be tough. The sense of the protector provider thing, my own take on that is like, you don't have to act that out all the time, but it's good to know that you have the capacity to, if the time ever came. It's like you'd rather a warrior in a garden rather than a gardener in a war. And if a man is not grounded and centered and capable of dealing with something, if he's in a heterosexual relationship, his wife's going to pick up on that energetically. So what has been your experience with guys you work with, and what are the most common problems that come in?
Yeah, I think having vulnerability, being able to share their emotions with their partner. I have one client that he'd been married for over 60 years. And initially when we started working together, he wasn't even able to make love to his wife, and Viagra was failing him. And So we started working together. She was supportive of him working with me, but she was shy. She was in her 60s. She was shy to work with me. And so I started coaching him. And then after the first few sessions, their love life started to improve. And then after 6 months, one things that I show men that they're able to do, I teach them how to do these own practices they actually show themselves, is how to have full body orgasmic experiences and actually be able to climax without having an ejaculation. So then they're not so drained. Because a lot of times men are draining their energy. We have to think more like batteries, and you're constantly draining that life force energy. All of that you just expelled from your body could create a whole human life. There's a lot of fluids and electrolytes, nutrients, minerals in there that need to be replenished. And that's why men will fall asleep quickly afterwards, because you're so depleted on your energy. But women, we get charged up in those times and those experiences. And that's why afterwards we can be more talkative, right? So after 6 months, he was just like, I was able to make love to my wife for an hour. She had 6 to 8 climaxes. I was ready to go in again the next day. I felt so much power in my his family jewels. It's like, I wish I discovered this 15 years ago. But one of the things he also said is that I have become a new person to myself and a new partner to my wife, because I also would talk to him about, your wife really cares about what your stressors are and what she really does want to know what's going on with you. And he said one day she gave him a big hug and said, thanks for finally allowing me to really get to know you. They had already raised a son in his 30s. And so now they're having better lovemaking experiences in their 60s than in their 30s. But he was like, you helped me heal a generational trauma. He had a mother wound. And a lot of times men, if they have challenges in the bedroom too, it can also be connected to a mother wound. But there can be so much trauma and shame about these things too. And there's so much pressure on men, performance anxiety, and a lot of pressure just to show up and be the provider. And then there's been a lot of with toxic masculinity, and there's toxic femininity as well. But there's been so much of the unhealthy, and I won't really say toxic, but like the unhealthy masculine energy. There's unhealthy feminine energy. We all are a combination of both masculine and feminine energy, regardless of gender. And then that will have men, a lot of times I'll see men that will resist their masculine aspects of themselves because they've seen it played out in such an unsafe way. And then one of the things you want to think of, I also again think of a battery, one end of the battery has a positive charge, the other end has a negative charge. And when you have the opposition of those charges, that creates the spark. Well, whenever a couple has been together for a long time, they start to rest sometimes in the same energy, like both of them being more in their feminine or both of them being more in the masculine. A lot of times now with women being in the workplace and having their own careers, we can be more in our masculine as well. And whenever that's happening, you feel more like roommates and you lack that desire and that passion because you're staying in that same energetic. So one of the things that I was even sharing with one of my clients that I was having the nervous system challenges is too the dynamic that he had seen such an unhealthy masculine in his father from trauma and things like that he was very uncomfortable in his masculine. But I said, his wife would nag him a lot. And I shared with him, I was like, your wife is just as exhausted of nagging you as you are of hearing it. I know that's hard to believe. But if you would just show up in your masculine energy more and feel safe in that space and embrace that, she will feel more held by you and like that you can handle the things. Mm-hmm. And she's not going to like kind of follow up and feel like she has to, because you're almost embodying a little boy energy instead of your masculine energy. And then she starts to mommy you instead of being your lover and your partner. And she doesn't want that dynamic either. It's not sexy for her either. And this goes both ways, but I'm just giving an example with men.
It's just making me laugh. Yeah, that I've heard this term, this phrasing of like how a lot of women nowadays don't want to bother with a man because it feels like another mouth to feed. It feels like another child in the house.
It does a lot of times, unfortunately.
And I think it's so funny how you said like they're as annoyed with nagging you as you are being nagged. But it generally, in a healthy relationship, I mean, assuming healthy, grounded people, that's usually warning sign number one that like there's a bit of dysregulation in the energies between the two of you, and the energy just might be being that like you feel grounded. I've heard of some terms with the masculine type ideology and energy is the idea of containers, like a masculine container. And what it does essentially, it's like I used to do for a brief period of time, I did ballroom dancing, and I actually did a competition with it. But I remember the way they described it to it is like the lead, usually the man, is the picture frame, and the woman is the picture. Like you, and a lot of women would say like, you don't have to have like all the skills in the book. We just want you to know that like you are telling us where to go. Like you are guiding me on a journey, and like you have that testosterone. You're not afraid to just like step confidently and move me and show me off to the crowd and things like that. And how it's just like the idea on paper sounds like so sexy to so many women, but you have to have the confidence with which to do that too, and not be afraid. And part of that confidence, I think, is also in like even inherent in things like testosterone is like accountability, responsibility, like risk taking. Like I'm gonna try to like take you dancing, but I'm gonna admit that I might make some mistakes. It's not gonna be perfect, but I'm not gonna get all sulky and ruminate too much on the mistake too much. I'm just gonna screw something up, and then we're gonna laugh and we're gonna keep going. Like I've got this contained. I've got the lid on this. I'm going to give you space, and I want you to just blossom into that space. And a lot of relationships, I think, fall into that mismatch. And like you said, the polarity, the energy dynamics, where the guy is desperately trying to soothe her instead of just soothing himself and stepping into masculine, which by extension will soothe her.
Also, it's great to know how the woman needs to be soothed and be aware of that and create that safety for her. But you also, the more you soothe yourself, the more, the safer she's going to feel. And I love what you shared about the dancing. This is something I shared with one of my clients as well. Like in the bedroom, his wife would, lead the show and didn't want to try certain new things with him, always wanted it to be one certain way for a quicker period of time. Children in the next room, worried about making noises with the children in the next room, all those things. And one of the things that I kept encouraging him to do was to take her salsa dancing, because that's something that she's interested in. Because even when you think of dancing, the man is taking the lead. It's leadership, and he's guiding. And there's a very fine line between providing leadership in a relationship or being like a dictator in the relationship and just, being overbearing and super controlling and rigid. No, that's not a good time. But when you feel confident in yourself, and even if you're not perfect, like you said, if you make a wrong move on the dance floor, just laugh and just keep going is really powerful. Because whenever you trip up, and we all trip up in spaces in life, if we let that derail us and we start to spiral down, and then, everything is doom and gloom and I can't believe, then that also will have the feminine more afraid to play with you, because then you take yourself to a space where you get so thrown off balance, and and the way you're feeling, like that just makes a bad time for everyone. So yeah, just the leadership and those dynamics with polarity are so important.
You mentioned salsa. I also took salsa dancing as well, and I went to this thing in New York City, which was like a salsa congress, where they have like this 2 days or something, 3 days of just like nonstop workshops and classes and just socializing. And I was very new to it, and it was really stuck in my head when I was learning about like it has to be perfect. I had to do the exact perfect moves. And what I thought so funny about this, and this is for any guy listening anywhere, this is practical advice you can apply to dancing and also just life in general, is that if you ask a girl in salsa dancing, would you rather option A, the guy who knows 1,000 moves but is super robotic and has no connection to you, or option B, the guy who knows like 3 moves but is very smiling, playful, making eye contact, laughing, really just moving his body, having fun, getting into it? Which would you prefer? 99% of people would say option B. 99%. And there's a good quote. It's Dr. Robert Glover. He's a therapist as well. He wrote this book, No More Mr. Nice Guy. And
I recommend that book a lot.
I love that book. And it talks about like the 3 characteristics of like confident man is like knows where he's going in life, comfortable in his own skin, knows where he's going in life, and is having fun getting there. And that's exactly salsa dancing, like I said a second ago. It's like comfortable in my own skin to just move around, not be afraid to move my body in this. knows where I'm going. Maybe I've got 3 moves, but I'm going to run the shit out of them, and laughing and smiling, having fun getting there, laughing, smiling, having a good time, creating that comfortable, safe space to say, like, you can let your guard down around me. It's okay. It's safe. And that does kind of bring this feminine energy that comes out of a lot of people. And even in the case of like homosexual relationships or anything like all those dynamics, it's like there's still going to be some degree of polarity between the two. Generally speaking, there's going to be a more masculine, more feminine type. And even in those relationships, you have the exact same dynamic of like one person making safe space, the other person being playful and having fun into it. Yeah.
Yes, and the bedroom, what applies on the dance floor, the salsa applies in the bedroom as well. Someone that someone that is able to kind of be relaxed in that moment and is enjoying themselves makes everything so much better than someone who's being such a rigid perfectionist is really important. And I want to share another thing too, is that with masculine and feminine energy, like I said, we're all a balance of masculine and feminine energy, but males are even more so of a balance of the masculine and feminine because you have the XY chromosome. And another one thing, I know you said the picture frame, another analogy I want to share is just think of a riverbanks. So if a river is flowing and rushing through, that's feminine energy. Now, if there's not the riverbanks there, that provides the masculine energy, or the riverbanks. And the stronger and the more consistent that the banks are, the more the water can race through there and just flow into the creativity, the feminine flow, the surrender, right?
Mm-hmm.
But if there aren't any masculine river banks and that river is just flowing like that, then that can cause destruction and flooding. So that's why it's so important to have that, again, the containment of the masculine energy. So
yeah, I've heard a lot, learning through this all this stuff, heard a lot of this perception that the feminine is associated with chaos. And a lot of people will hear that and think like, oh, so I'm a woman, or I'm female, feminine, I'm chaotic, I'm just going to break stuff. Like, well, yeah, the other side of that is like order and structure, which is masculine. And when you have something like anarchy, you got extreme feminine energy coming out. But when you have a dictatorship, you have extreme masculine coming out. Like, so like neither one is inherently good by themselves. They need to balance each other out. Like you do want a bit of chaos and creativity and new ideas and like unusual combinations of things flowing within a space that can contain it and handle it. Like the river, like water, like in some sense above a certain speed and whatnot. Like it gets turbulent, but at the same time, the river can handle it. And there's a beauty in that.
Exactly. And chaos is what creates creativity.
Yeah. When people hear chaos, I think the assumption is like destruction, but chaos essentially just means like unformed, unknown potential, infinite potential. Like it could be anything. We don't know what it's going to be yet until something comes along and structures it and gives it space to structure within, and then keeps evolving within that structure. Absolutely. So how does this? One of the points you mentioned before was in the bedroom. How does masculine, like, I guess if a guy comes to you and says like, I'm really insecure and I have this and that in the wound, how does that connect down to something like erectile dysfunction, premature ejaculation? Like where's the connection there? Because most guys, I think, would think if I have ED, then I might just need to go to the doctor because of a blood pressure issue. Or if I have PE, whatever it may, it just means like, it's genetics, just who I am. But it's like, no, there might be something underneath there between like your stress, between your past, your history, your perception towards sex and things like that is causing this issue to happen.
Shame is a really big one that we get programmed into about our bodies and about intimacy. And the thing is, usually with men that have ED, doing things in different practices so that you increase your blood flow to your sex organs, to your genitals, so that helps to boost the blood flow there as well. Doing different breath work practices also helps you oxygenize your blood flow. Doing meditation practices is really helpful, especially to last longer, because again, your brain is your largest sex organ. So with neuroplasticity and with meditation, what it helps you to, create with neuroplasticity, it helps your brain. And so that's why it's so good to improve lovemaking. Because that is, again, the largest sex organ. So it all starts there. We think that it starts just down below, but it really starts in the brain. And, having a different relationship to your body and to your pleasure, because a lot of times for males, they'll learn, especially if they're finishing faster, like having PE, then a lot of times, young males, when you're first learning and you're self-pleasuring as a teen, you don't want to be caught by your parents. So you'll get from point A to point B, you'll do it really fast.
Just
So
knock
again,
on the door next time. Knock on the door. God.
Yeah, please. So with neuroplasticity, it's almost like a ski slope, and you have these pleasure pathways in your brain, and you've done this so many times, you go deeper and deeper into the groove of the brain. And you kind of get in that rut, literally, of always doing it that way. So then when you want to slow down and be with a lover, it can be a challenge because your brain is so used to like getting from point A to point B really fast. So being able to receive pleasure and have longer, first initially having longer solo pleasure sessions with yourself, with self-pleasuring. A lot of people, they'll tell me, I want to know this, but I'm not with a lover right now. So especially for men, they're like, I'm not with a lover right now, and I really want to learn how to be a great lover. So when I get with someone, then I'll learn this. But that's the challenge, because then you're going to be trying through, tantric practices and techniques that I share with people. You're going to be trying to do these practices, but then you go back with your lover and you get back into doing it the same way, and it makes it longer path or journey to get to the goals. And so just first having this mastery within yourself is so key, because you don't want to practice this with a lover, because women are very intuitive, even if you're not letting them know that, and it starts to feel like a lab experiment in the bedroom. And you're disconnected because you're thinking like, man, what am I supposed to be doing? So you're not present, and your presence is the true gift. That's why meditation also helps you be a better lover, because you know how to be deeply present and dropped in. It's so night and day from someone to be with someone who has a deep meditative practice to someone who doesn't. Because that's where, like you said before, like monkey mind, we can be jumping and thinking of the long laundry list of things we didn't do that day, or a stressful conversation with a coworker, and we're into fantasy and we're not fully being like there with our partners, right? The other thing, when people have PE, there's a lot of tension in their body. So breath, sound, and movement. Sound is like a thief, and it steals the tension from your body. That's why moaning can help. But if also we're in a situation where there's a baby sleeping in the next room, okay, now we're going to be quiet. So I did have a client that he hadn't been having any challenges with that. And then he and his wife had been married for many years, and they had a new baby. And I said, you trying to be quieter is why you're finishing faster, because, you're holding that tension. So the more tension, like if a woman is afraid to be expressive, or again, sleeping baby or whatever is trying to be quiet, for a woman, it will actually be harder for her to have a climax because of that tension. For a man, he will actually finish faster because you're holding too much tension in your body. So deep breathing, moaning, using sound is really good. And using other practices to let go of tension in your body, like how are you maybe too uptight, and allow yourself to relax and do it. There's a lot of different practices that I teach to help people get to those spaces. And then you start to have a different experience in your body. I've had clients in their 50s that are like, oh, now even with my solo pleasure rituals, I feel my climax from the top of my head down to my big toe. I didn't know that was possible. Because men are really limiting how they experience pleasure, because no one has really taught us how amazing our bodies are and the level of pleasure that we can experience, and how much pleasure we can not just experience, but both give and receive. And we continue to limit ourselves. And so, pleasure is medicine. And when you have these really deep experiences, when you're making love to a partner, and you're able to see what your intimacy blocks are, like what are your intimacy blocks? Some people have challenges also receiving. And so I'll even ask them, how are you receiving a compliment? Are you able to receive help from other people? Even for women, if you always are blocking receiving things, you could also be blocking your bliss and your most orgasmicness. Because do you feel worthy of it? Are you just learning Tantra because you're a people pleaser? That was initially me. And your focus is on being the best lover, and what all do I need to know to please my partner? Or can you also allow yourself to receive that? Because first, it starts with you being your own best lover. And when you learn how to be your own best lover and get out of your own way of receiving love, receiving pleasure, connecting deeply to yourself, When you remove those barriers, you're able to do that with someone else, and you actually attract better lovers if you're single, and you can create a more loving relationship within the relationship dynamics you have. And this is also why if a couple is considering divorce and they're in a very unhealthy, maybe toxic relationship, that, there's some dynamics that divorce is probably the best option. But we can be so afraid of change that we will even tolerate unhealthy relationships, because change is so painful and scary for people. So it's like, I'd rather deal with the devil that I already know than the fear of the unknown, which is wild. But I will refuse to work with them, because Tantra creates soulful soulmate relationships. And this might be someone that you don't need to have that deep of a bond with, because their behaviors and the way they're treating you and vice versa are not healthy. So, we always will say, I would love to have a soulmate, but do you know how to mate with someone's soul? Do you know how to make love to someone's soul? So often we have so many intimacy blocks that whenever we're being with someone physically, it's just skin to skin and at surface level. And we're going through the motions, right? We're doing the steps like at a dance, right? But we're not truly dropped in and aware. And do you know how to make love to that person's soul? Do you know how to fully allow someone to see you? Have intimacy? Eye gazing is a tantric practice. And that's so edgy for people.
Yeah.
Like, okay, we can do whatever, but don't look me in the eye.
Yep.
You know what I mean? I can't receive that. And so if you want to have a soulmate type relationship, Tantra creates that, because you know how to make love to someone's soul. And then we go, why are our relationships so superficial? Well, the way you make love is very surface level and superficial. And that's why you don't have that depth in your relationship.
Yeah, it's my own personal journey to all this stuff, learning about attachment theory, generational trauma patterns and behaviors. And it's been hysterical, because I've been reading book after book, and I'm like, oh, I did that, that's me. Turns out there's scientists out there spending millions of dollars for exactly what I did. I had no idea what it was along the way. But you mentioned the eye gazing thing, which is actually really interesting. I remember reading about this and hearing about this, and how essentially there's a certain degree of oxytocin aversion going on.
Yes.
That basically your body's literally having a stress response in response to your own oxytocin production, which is why things like eye gazing, things like physical touch can be overwhelming if you're not used to it. Or like it can just feel like you're setting off fire alarms. Like, I can't look you in the eyes. I don't want you to touch me right. I don't want you to hug me. Or I get this a lot with massage, where people will come in and say, like, who doesn't love a massage? How could somebody not want a massage? And just like, you have no idea what things they've been through in life that have gotten them to the point that they're physically afraid of touch, let alone from a stranger. But even deeper than that, like people who just don't enjoy sex, don't enjoy intimacy, don't enjoy eye contact. It's like there's something way back in that person's history, most likely, that is just echoing into their adult life, and they have no idea where it's coming from. And they walk around life saying, I'm just this kind of person. And it's like, probably not. But like you said, it's scary to take that leap into uncertainty, because we're so wired for predictability and certainty, that when you work with somebody and you say, like, is this going to work? And you're like, hopefully. Can't guarantee 100%, but we're just going to walk down a couple of different pathways and see what clicks, what works for you, what doesn't work for you.
Yeah. Well, the other thing, like when I work with clients, it's also, it will work if you show up and do the work. I can't make you do the practices. Like if you focus in on yourself, and if you're open and you're doing the work and showing up for yourself, and the depth of how deeply you show up with yourself and how much you do that for yourself is the degree of the results that you're going to get. And even just little changes can help. But I think that that's the fear when people will say, oh, this is just how I am. Like a very toxic quote that I used to resonate with before I started my healing journey. And I used to date and operate very much like Samantha on Sex and the City. And it was the quote by Marilyn Monroe, like, if you can't handle me at my worst, you don't deserve me at my best.
Yeah.
And so then just feeling like, well, I've got all these other great things, so you just need to deal with it, because it's just how I am. And at the time, that really resonated with me. When I started doing my healing, I was like, that is such BS. No one has to deal with me or my toxic things like that. That is not okay, But especially, at the time I had been living in LA and I had modeled. And so when you have all of these things, you just think, oh, well, I'm beautiful and I'm funny and I'm smart and like, just deal with it. I mean, yeah, sometimes I have a meltdown, but I'm good in bed. Like, what more do you want? Right. So it's like such unhealthy behavior, but we will be like that and be like, oh, this is just how I am, because we're unwilling to do anything different because it's too scary for us.
Yeah.
Or we don't want to take accountability or responsibility and realize, because it's hard to look at yourself and see, just like you said, you read through the books and go, and I've done this too, like, oh man, I've done that, I've done this, I've done that. And then when you have to really look at yourself, you have to be confronted with some things. But I'm telling you, your life gets so much better. It can seem so scary, but on the other side of that, your world opens up in so many beautiful ways and your relationships improve. Like, I wish I had done this sooner.
Yeah, I hear a lot of people, the phrase is always "do the work," and like, yeah, I think the biggest problem, the biggest barrier I see personally is, what does that mean? Well, problem is it's a blanket statement for everyone because everyone's work is completely unique to them. But I think one common theme you can tie through all of that, essentially, and again, it's like a more of a Western perspective, is like when you walk into a situation that you know you should be doing, but you're uncomfortable physically, emotionally, your nervous system is acting up, your anxiety spiking, but you know you're supposed to be there. It might be like practicing eye contact with your partner. Maybe you can only tolerate 30 seconds, 15 seconds, 10 seconds, whatever it may be. Sit there for those 30 seconds and just like endure the tantrum your body's going to throw. And then when it becomes too much, then you take a step away. Okay, whatever it may be. But the work, in my opinion, tends to be voluntarily walking into that discomfort and sitting there for as long as you can to try to, it's like getting into a cold pool. It's like it's freezing, but if you just put a foot in, let it stay there for a little bit, put a leg in, let it stay there, go down a little further, let it stay, and eventually you'll acclimate to it. But you have to be willing to, like, say that first dip is going to be freezing, and then it's going to get better, and then my leg is going to, then it's going to be freezing again, and it's going to get better, and then eventually I have no problem swimming in ice water. It's fine. But that would, like, that getting yourself to essentially say, even though my body's going to throw a tantrum and I'm going to freak out, I'm going to get anxiety, my mind's going to send every excuse in the book possible to run away from this. I'm just going to sit here until it passes.
I like that you shared that, and I want to add something to that as well, is that part of trauma is too much too fast. And I think in our society there is of like an enduring thing. Like, you just got to suck it up. You just got to do it. Right. So instead, if you did something like with eye gazing, take some nice, long, slow, deep belly breaths. Like, breathe big into your belly, because that stretches your diaphragm out. That helps with your vagus nerve. That helps slow down and calm your nervous system. And just don't judge yourself. Just in an act like that, be gentle with yourself.
Yeah.
And be there as long as you can. And even practice eye gazing initially by just candle flame, and focus and breathe deep and focus on the flicker of the candle and just holding that presence, and think of your partner or that person. You can have a photo of them on the other side of it, right? And just practice that if it's really that super edgy for you.
Yeah.
But like, how can we resource ourselves in those moments so that we can, but yes, just sticking with it, and don't make yourself wrong or bad if you don't stay in with it as long as you thought. Still just celebrate yourself because you're showing up for yourself.
Yeah. And this is a common thing I've heard, is you have to also recognize your inner critic and recognize, like, your thoughts are not always your own. Like, nobody's born hating themselves that much. Like, you had to have learned it from, or at all. Yeah. Like, you had to have learned it from somewhere. And like you said, it's chunking it down to be small enough. Like, there's just the idea of, like, if somebody else is trying a new activity that you're very familiar with, you wouldn't be yelling at them to do it faster. You'd be patient with them, understand, like, oh, they're like, if they were out on some kind of like bungee jumping or something, or whatever new activity, and they were bad and they were beating themselves up, you'd be encouraging them. So then why not encourage yourself as you're going through the exact same, well, all I can tolerate is 5 seconds of eye contact behind a candle looking at a photo in the dark. It's pathetic. No, it's a start. It's a starting point. And then you get to 10 seconds, and you get to 15, and you get to 20, and then you turn the lights on, and you do another 30 seconds, and then you get to like the person in the room, and you start back at 5 seconds, and then after a while, holy shit, look at that, you're making full eye contact while making passionate soul making love.
Yeah. And initially you could make the eye contact in a non-sexual way, you know? So you like, again, like you said, ease your way into it. And one thing that I do to remind myself is just remember as a baby when we first started learning to walk. Like babies, when they first try to walk and they fall down, they don't give up and just go, oh, this walking thing isn't for me. They
I'm
just
going to
continue
crawl
to
for the rest of
try.
my life.
Yeah. You just continue to try. So just continue to lean in and just know that everyone, whenever we all first start something new, we're not so perfect. Even when I just started my YouTube channel years ago, I remember I loved Marie Forleo and I would look at her videos, and she's been doing this for a long time and has a whole team and a perfect studio and the perfect lighting and someone doing her hair. And I'm over here comparing my first videos to hers. And then someone said to me, go back on her YouTube channel and look at her very first videos. And they were so plain with an ugly background, brick wall. You can't, we do this thing that's so unfair. We will compare our first time doing something and hold it to the standard of someone who's like an expert or professional. And their first time was messy too. Like, let it just be messy and give yourself compassion and grace.
Yeah, comparing yourself today to who somebody else is along their journey at different times. Absolutely. I took a trip down south recently, and I've had the same issue for a long time of feeling like, oh, that's so impressive. That person's so impressive. I could never catch up. I could never do that. And I was sitting in the airport, and I was looking around just like in marvel out of how crazy complex all the moving parts are, and yet still just flows beautifully between getting the planes to the right terminals on time and getting everybody boarded onto the plane in a timely manner, and all the supplies and the plane itself. How many times they probably had to like trial and error before they got to the design that it is now, and it's still being iterated on. And I had this moment of thinking, like, normally my thought might be, wow, this is super impressive. I could never think of something like this. Changed it to, wow, this is super impressive. I wonder how many times they had to screw up before they got to this point. And then it started just like looking at everything in my life and be like, even with this podcast, I'm on episode like 16 right now. Who the hell knows where I'm going to be? I'm going to get to like episode 160. It's going to be it's going to be a studio. It's going to be the producers here with the less fancy professional lighting. But right now, it's just me in my apartment with a microphone and a camera.
Yeah, it's just like taking action and just doing it, because that's how we learn, and just the doing instead of overthinking it. And the thing, perfectionism is just that's another form of procrastination.
Yeah, I remember this really interesting thing I learned. It was like your amygdala, which essentially is like your fear center, among other things. It only learns by experience. And the problem becomes when you have a fantasy in your head of what you want to accomplish versus what you can actually accomplish. There is a bit of like a grieving of the difference that has to happen. You have to acknowledge, like, I'm not a master, I'm not an expert yet. It's going to take time. And on top of that, that when you feel that fear, you think, oh, maybe I could read a book, maybe I could talk to somebody. Like, there's nothing that could substitute physical hands-on experience to the actual task you're trying to do. Screwing up and then just being able to sit within the frustration itself. And the more you do that, the more that gap of frustration will just shrink and shrink and shrink and shrink. I notice this sometimes, like in my free time, I'll be playing like certain games. I'm not a super professional, but I'm not terrible. And I'll play like these player versus player Call of Duty and things like that. And there'll be like these moments where somebody will, shoot me and beat me up. And I'll have like, I used to have like this, oh, God, this guy's probably cheating. He's a hacker. He just plays this game 16 hours a day. He's got no life. And then I'd be like, okay, no, hold on. He's probably a lot more skilled. He's practiced more. I'm getting older. My fan of coordination not that good. And that window between, I want to kill him, to, oh, I screwed this up. I could have done this better. I could have this, has been shrinking and shrinking and shrinking to the point that now it's like, that was actually a good play. He was smart. That was good. Okay, cool. And I've noticed over time where it's shrinking more and more through experience and learning to say, like, this is a learning opportunity. This is not a critique of myself. This is a learning opportunity. This is a learning opportunity. And like every time you screw up and make a mistake, learning opportunity, learning opportunity, learning opportunity, to the point that you stop judging yourself. Like you said, the beginning videos she had were terrible, and now it looks amazing. But she had to go through that journey of screwing up before she can get to the point she is now.
And then we know we learn from our mistakes. We learn from the, and then like we'll say like, oh, we'll have an idea of how to do it better or to do it differently.
Yeah, absolutely. So what are there's like one or two simple practical tips for everyday Tantra that people can take home with them, try out just to begin with?
White Tantra practices focus on meditation, breath work, mantras, yantras. So even just doing something where you can meditate or even take a walk, like an active meditation and go walk in nature and be present. Even you can eat your food in more of a tantric way just by taking your time and slowing down and savoring every bite and taking
Mm.
nice deep breaths and having appreciation for the food, gratitude, taking it in and just taking your time with it and stop rushing, because how many times through the day do we rush through things out of habit without even slowly sitting down and noticing what we're doing? So it's just being able to notice and slow down and be more present in the moment with ourselves. And then, the meditation is such a key. There's a saying that says if you're too busy to meditate 10 minutes a day, you should probably be meditating an hour a day. Because if your life is that hectic, you need it more. And I know that when I start my days off with meditation, then any challenges that happen tend to roll off my back and things are a lot easier as I go through it. And my day, just I'm changing my energy. So doing things like that. And then dancing is really a great thing because dance incorporates breath, sound, and movement. So one thing I'll do is if I'm stressed is I'll play the song by Taylor Swift, Shake It Off, and I'll just shake. And there's a practice in Tantra called the Shiva shake. And you literally just shake your hands, shake your arms, your legs, your booty, your hips, your feet, and just shake everything. And just imagine you're just shaking that stress off. So when you are stressed out, just take a moment and do that. And one of my coaches, Preston Smiles, will say, a practice that is also, again, because dance does breath, sound, and movement, you're breathing more deeply, you're making sounds if you're singing along, you're listening to sound of the music, and movement, you're moving the energy, right? So he'll do a practice called Dance Yourself Clean. So to change your state, your emotional state. So put on a music that can elicit a certain mood. If you want to feel really sad and let go of some sad feeling emotions, you can do that first. And literally dance like no one's watching, like it's not a choreographed thing. Like close your eyes and feel into your body how your body wants to move, and just allow that energy, that stress, that heaviness, allow it to move and be released through your body, because that's what our ancestors did so many years ago of doing like tribal dance and things like that. That's how they would support their nervous systems and let go of the stressors of the day by doing dance. So even just taking a moment for that for yourself in the day can really be a powerful reset button for you. And that's just a beautiful practice.
It's fun. The dancing thing you remind me of, I think it was Desmond Tutu who was helping post-apartheid healing. I think it was him. And there's a story about how what people were doing, he had like a massive gathering of thousands of people, and they would come up on stage one at a time and say what happened to them. Maybe something, when their family was killed off, something tragic, they lost something, and they had to just verbalize it. And if a person was having like too intense of a moment where they were just getting overwhelmed by the feeling, he would basically stop everything, and everybody would just get up and start dancing and singing for like 10 minutes. Like the entire thousands of
Yeah.
people, like all just one giant group of just like shake off that energy, calm everybody down, go back to what they were doing. And if a person was getting overwhelmed, stop everything, get up, start dancing. And there is this lost value to physical movements, to song, through dance, things like that, that people look at it like, oh, it's for fun. Like, no, it's so much more than that.
It's
It's
so
so therapeutic and
therapeutic.
deep. Yeah.
And also, we are mirror neurons, and us watching someone have a challenging emotional state impacts us. That's what's so important. When they say pay attention to the 5 people you hang around with the most, because if their energy is always off and they're always super stressed out and they're super low vibration and they're not doing any self-care practices, that energy, when they're around you, you're going to pick that up. And we want to think like energy can be woo woo or chakras, or like you said, you know what I'm saying? People are like, we have to see it to believe it. But when you turn on the light switch in your home, as long as you've been paying your electric bill, you can trust that the electricity is there. Even though you don't see it, you know that it's working. And we are energetic beings. And so just being able to master our energy, and our emotions are just energy in motion. So when we have that emotional mastery, that energetic mastery, that's when we can start to master our lives, because we can want to manifest or have a lot of things happen in our lives, and we'll try to acquire things the way we've been taught of, getting the job and earning a lot of money and buying the things and being super successful. But you'll see people like that often at the end of it, they're just like, oh, that was kind of underwhelming. They realize that the $1 million didn't make them happier, XYZ, right? And so we think it's like happiness is like an outside game and us accumulating all the things, and the one with the most things at the end wins the prize. But it's really an inside game. It's an inside out game. So our outer world is just reflecting to us again, just like in relationships. Our outer world is a reflection of our inner world. If we want to change our outer world and what we're experiencing, it starts with us changing our inner world. And these are tools you can do to start changing your inner world. And then everything will start shifting outwardly. And I just had a client who was driving through, he's moving across country. And I just saw him yesterday. And when I first started working him, he was younger, probably late 20s. And could barely afford to work with me. And I just worked with him for 6 weeks. And then he started applying the tools that he learned and kept doing them and got some better job opportunities. And like last year, he made $400,000 in a year. And
I got to sign up with you. Wow.
Yeah. When I first started working with him, he was having some financial challenges and having to supplement his income, delivering food, doing food delivery and things like that, and driving Uber in the Bay Area. So it's really interesting. But yeah, and he was telling me, she goes, I just want to get my business to where I just can have you like on a retainer for $200,000 a year for me and my wife, and just you continue to guide us. Because the more I've been teaching him this mastery for himself, he continues to elevate in his life, in all areas of his life. He has a much better relationship. Everything has been flourishing. But all really starts here. And then when we went and grabbed a bite to eat, and he was just like, our last session, he goes, I felt like you were a shaman. He goes, you are like a mushroom, like medicinal mushrooms. He was like, you completely took me on a journey through something with a mother wound. He goes, you took me on this journey and took me to a place I felt like if I was on psychedelics, and I wasn't, and so much cleared up for me. He goes, sometimes I just want to keep you to myself and not have everyone know what you do, but what you do is really powerful. But it all starts like I had to do this first for myself. And that's how I'm able to guide other people, by first, doing it for myself. And then I attract people that I can also help they're just a different place in their journey. And I'm just a guide guiding them along, because you have all this magic in you. And I want men to know you have so much magic and treasure within you. But our society has been conditioning you to just be like, how many facts, operate from the neck up. How many facts can I remember? What is in my bank account? All these things that we think make us successful, and neglecting what your heart needs, what your soul needs, neglecting what's going on inside, or where you might be hurting, and just trying to always tough it up and disconnect from your emotions. You are a human having a human experience. And the more you can show up like this, that's what really women want. It's not about having the women I hang around with. It's not about the richest man. It's like a high value man, a man who values himself highly and really is so connected within his heart, and his heart energy isn't always judging himself. Or because if you're with a man that's very insecure, or a woman, okay, if you're with someone who's insecure, that insecurity is going to spew out to you. If they're always judging themselves and critical of themselves, they're going to be very critical and judgmental of you in relationship. So it's really important that we focus on these things and find our own inner peace. And then we can have relationships that are more peaceful. We're like, why are my relationships so conflict, so much drama? Turmoil. Why is this so hard? But like, we haven't focused on this. We keep wanting to, I'm going to then try on this partner. And it's always the same thing, right? But a different name. Okay, well, you didn't work. Next. And then we never look at that relationship of ourselves. Like, you are the common denominator in all of your unhealthy relationships. What is your relationship to yourself? Can you romance yourself? Can you love on yourself? And then from that space of being resourced, then invite another in, and you'll see it'll be such a game changer. It can change all areas of your life.
This was a recent realization with my past relationships, is that I've been dating the same woman in different skin for like 15 years. And it just kind of hit me one day, and I was thinking back through all the old relationships and why they didn't work, and I was like, holy shit, like it's the same. It's like one of two dynamics that happened with me, but it was the same thing over and over and over again. This is where I was like, oh shit. So when I mentioned the men's coaching things before, I'm actually working with a men's coach myself, and he's like, I can't help anybody until I can help myself, and he's been doing a lot of good work learning from my own shaman in a way, and how to uncover my own wounds and get everything out. Absolutely. So the last thing I want to ask before we wrap things up is, who is in your village? Who is in your life that you value, that brings a lot of power to you, to your life?
As far as like a mentor that I have?
Could be mentor, family, friends, parents, anything like that.
Yeah. My parents have already transitioned, but my daughters are really important to me. I've learned so much from them. The wild thing is when we have children, we're just like, I have so much to teach them, but then it's like, wow, I have so much to learn from them. Because your children can be your greatest teachers, and they're tough. They're a tough crowd. They will let you know when you're messing up. Like, I could have all the accolades as a nurse and being recognized and getting awards and doing some really incredible things as a nurse. And then I'm like, oh, I'm saving lives. I'm doing this, I'm doing that. But I was being a workaholic. And I wasn't as present as I should have been for my daughters when in their most formative years. And they would let me know about it later as they got older. They're like, that's not okay. So I had to like do the work on myself, and they really helped me so much. And then my mentors, the people that I've learned from, like Preston Smiles, Alexi Panos, are two people that I've learned a great deal from and have really helped me to do my healing. So then I am actually a better person to myself and to the people that I love. And so when I started healing deeply within myself, I was able to heal those relationships with my daughters. And those are my most important relationships.
Beautiful. Dominique, where can we find your content?
Thanks for asking. My website is yestantra.com, YESTANTRA. And I have a Yes Tantra YouTube as well. Those are the main places that you can find me. And on my Instagram is just at yes.tantra. And you can find me there too. So those are the spaces.
Dominique, thank you so much for your time today. Really appreciate it.
You're welcome. Thank you as well.
Thank you for joining us today. If you found us informative, thought-provoking, or learned something new, please leave a review or a comment and tell a friend about the podcast. Feedback means the world to me, as I want to make this the best possible podcast that it can be, and to help others identify the causes of and solutions to problems in their own lives and villages. Until next time, let's keep working on rebuilding the village.